Hello everyone, Foxy here, and welcome to Mostly Mental. Aurora is back, and this time she's challenged me to a classic board game called Hex. We've got a board made of hexagons, arranged into a grid like so. To play, we take turns placing stones onto hexes. I place black stones, and Aurora places white ones. My goal is to create a chain of black stones stretching across the board, connecting these black regions at the left and right. And Aurora's goal is to create a chain of white stones from top to bottom. So a game might go something like this. And then Aurora can place one final stone here, connecting her two sides, so she wins. Good game. Hex differs from other games we've played in an important way: the ending. Most of the games we play follow what's known as the standard play convention, where a game ends when someone runs out of moves. But with Hex, we're trying to achieve a different goal. The game ends when someone connects their sides, even if there are still plenty of valid plays left on the board. That means none of the game theory I've showed on this channel before applies to Hex. I'll need a totally new strategic approach if I want to win the next time around. Let's see what we can come up with. First things first, does a game of Hex even need to have a winner? Could there be a tie where both players are blocked? Or is there some way to fill a board so that both players connect their sides? Well, consider a board completely filled with stones like so. And draw in all the boundaries between the black and white regions, including the spaces on the edges. It looks like these boundaries form loops and chains with no dead ends or branches. And that's not hard to prove. At any intersection point, three hexes meet. If they all have the same color, there's no boundary there. And if they have two different colors, we get exactly two boundary segments. A dead end would have one boundary segment, and a branch would have three, neither of which is possible. By the same logic, the only possible non-looping chains must connect the corners of the board. Since there are four corners, we get two of these chains. And they can't cross, that would be branching, so each must connect a pair of neighboring corners. Now all we need to do is walk along one of these chains, facing toward the other, and mark what we see along the way. We'll start looking at one outer region, walk past some hexes of the same color, then end at the opposite outer region. And that's a winning path. And this argument works for any filling of the board, so there must always be a winner. The argument works the other way, too. If there's a winning path for white, then the left edge of that path will be a chain connecting the left two corners. And if there's a winning path for black, the top edge will be a chain connecting the top two corners. But those two chains use the same corner in the top left, which means the boundary would have to branch. We can't have that, so we can't have winning paths for both players. So every game will have one and only one winner. This is known as the Hex Theorem. The Hex Theorem turns out to be closely related to some other famous results you might have seen elsewhere, like the Jordan curve theorem and the Brouwer fixed point theorem. But exploring that would take us a bit too far off topic, so I'll link some papers below if you're curious. So we're guaranteed to have a winner. But which player will it be? Well, Aurora's much better than I am, so she's generously offered me a handicap to give me a fighting chance. Namely, she's let me fill in a row for free. Can I win now? I can't just build a path straight across the board, since Aurora could block me with one stone. But maybe a bit of redundancy will help? Let's try building two paths. And anytime Aurora blocks me in one, I can take the corresponding spot in the other. So if she plays here, I can play here. And if she plays here, I can play here. And so on. Okay, that doesn't quite work. It's still pretty easy for Aurora to get through my wall. But there is one promising quirk of this approach. Any path that Aurora takes, starting at the top and passing through these middle rows, is forced to take a step to the left here. Maybe we can make use of that. Let's extend our blockade by matching one row further in either direction. Yes, these rows are a little bit shorter, but that'll turn out to be okay. Aurora can still get through, but now she has to take two steps to the left. One at these middle rows, and one at either the row to the left or the row to the right. And if we extend this pattern all the way out to two matching triangles, we find she has to take a step to the left for each pair of matching layers. And one of each pair of layers is in the top row, so the number of pairs is the width. But if she takes that many steps, that last step will take her off the board. In other words, there can't be a winning path. And by the Hex Theorem, if she doesn't win, that means I do. Good game. This pairing approach is often useful for solving positions in Hex. For example, here's a position from the game we played at the start of the video. If we pair up some of the remaining empty spaces, like so, we see that Aurora has a counter for every possible play I could make. So she'd already won by this point in the game. Actually, she'd won 2 moves earlier, but that's a little harder to prove. Okay, so I can win if Aurora gives me a big head start, but what if we're playing fairly on an empty board? Well, Aurora's graciously given me the first move, so maybe she has some winning strategy prepared for the second player? By definition, a winning strategy is unbeatable, even if I know what's coming and play perfectly. So if Aurora has one, she could just hand me her playbook, filled with winning responses to any move that I could make, and I still wouldn't be able to stop her. But in Hex, I can use this same strategy against her. All I need to do is translate these moves of hers into moves of mine by swapping the colors and flipping the boards. Then I can pretend that Aurora has made a first move, maybe here. Then I can just look this position up in her notes and play the appropriate move. Then Aurora will make another move, maybe here, and I can look that one up too, and we'll repeat. And if at some point she actually plays here, where we were just pretending she had a stone, then I can pretend that she added a stone anywhere else, maybe here. And since this is a winning strategy, eventually, if I follow it, I'll end up with a winning chain. But hang on, we assumed this was Aurora's winning strategy for playing second. So she'll also end up with a winning chain. And the Hex Theorem says we can't both win. So this plan can't really exist. The second player can't force the win. And since someone has to win, that means it has to be the first player. This strategy stealing approach tells us that the first player can force a win. But it's a purely non-constructive argument. It tells us who wins, but not how. Is there a way to find this winning play? If I'd written this 10 years ago, I would have just shrugged and ended the video there. But recently, game theorists have made some major progress toward understanding Hex. The details get a bit technical, so I'll just give you a brief sketch here, and I'll leave the full papers down in the description for anyone who's curious. The key observation is that a hex position, particularly one late in the game, can be broken down into disconnected, but not quite independent, pockets of empty space. Each of these regions is surrounded by alternating runs of black and white stones called terminals. And what really matters within each region is which of the terminals end up connected. For instance, if we fill this region like this, or like this, or like this, all of the white terminals are connected and the black ones are disconnected. But if we fill it like this, the two white terminals on the left are connected, as well as the two black terminals on the right. These sets of connections define different outcome classes. And some outcomes are better for me than others, so they give us a partial order. We can evaluate a position by considering the sequences of possible moves. I could put a stone in either of these empty spaces, or I could play on another part of the board and let Aurora play instead. Then either player can fill in the other space. We can then assign an outcome to each position, starting at the bottom and working up. These outcomes can get cumbersome quickly, so there are also some rules to let us simplify. Then, once we've got the outcomes for each smaller region, we can combine them to get an outcome for a larger region containing all of them. And this logic works for regions that aren't fully enclosed too, so long as we take special care along the open boundaries. The outcome classes just get a little bit messier. That means, in principle, we can take an empty board, carve it up, analyze each piece, and then put them all back together to get a full solution. In practice, this only works for small games before it becomes infeasible to compute, but it's still a good foundation for building a broader theory. So where does that leave us? Well, I know I should be able to win if I move first, and with a powerful enough computer, I could calculate the right play. That wouldn't be much fun to watch, though, so Aurora and I will hold off on the rematch for now. If you'd like to know more about playing Hex, there are plenty of resources available. There are books, strategy guides, tactics puzzles, variants, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. I'll link those below, as well as the papers I mentioned earlier. But for me, what's far more interesting is that much of this theory is new, so there are lots of open questions left to answer. Can we add or otherwise combine hex positions like we can with other games? Is there an analog of temperature that lets us decide which region to play in first? Are there any structures like the Nimbers or the Surreals hidden within Hex's outcome classes? There's so much cool math to explore, and I'm excited to see where it all leads. And who knows, maybe you will make the next big discovery. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again soon.